So I'm outdoors on a rather chilly December day. I'm armed only with a spray can. This can only mean one thing. Yep, today on Dragon's Teeth we're going to be doing some painting. Here's the collection of my 28mm to be painted. These are all fantasy figures. They've not all been base coated yet because I got one lot done, then I actually found another box full of figures that I'd forgotten about. I bought those on eBay a few weeks back. So let's just have a closer look. There's the piranha men, or the deep ones that I bought at Dragon Meat. Then we've got those barbarians that I bought up at Leeds, the metal figures and a few of the plastic spiders in there as well. And there's a collection of a sort of adventurers and a couple of monster types, some hobbits, ranger, wizard, a couple of demons, and the zombies that I got from Hobby Hive a few weeks back. They were ready assembled and base coated. There's the big spider. And again, this is a collection of adventurers with a couple of monsters thrown in. There's a sort of hag or witch there, which is quite a nice one. And mostly sort of men at arms and some couple of elves, I think, in there. And an ogre or two. And I mentioned about something new, using black as an undercoat. Because normally for figures I tend to use grey. But I'm trying something new for me. So the black undercoat, and then I'm going to dry brush these with white and then paint. I was looking at a couple of clips on YouTube and it looked like it gave pretty good results, so I'm going to give that a go. And this new painting method, as I'm sure you'll all know, is called slap chop. No one seems to know why it's called that, or if it should even be called that. Apparently that's a newfangled term for quite an old method. Anyway, it's new to me. The other thing that's new today is, of course, this is my first time working at the new desk, at the new setup. So I've got my lighting ready, 3 LED lights from 3 different angles that should give a nice coverage, and I'll be playing around with camera angles and that kind of thing as we go along, but hopefully everything will be nice and clear. Now, because this is a new method for me, and because ideally with slap chop you're supposed to be using contrast or speed paints, which I don't have at the moment, I'm going to be working with the zombies because they were cheap and cheerful. I've got a group of them, so if I muck 1 or 2 up, it's not a big deal. I have read that you can use your normal acrylics if they're thinned or watered down properly, and I have ordered some proper thinner for them as well, which should be here in a couple of days. But I'm going to give it a go today with just watering down the acrylics, and we'll see how that works out. With each figure base coated in matte black, the next stage is to dry brush. First a dry brush in grey, and then I'm going to go over that again, a dry brush in white. So let's get started. Figure number 1 is your standard zombie with a polearm. Tamiya Sky Grey, that's the lightest one I could find, and I've got a Humbrol matte white for the second dry brush coat. And for the dry brushing, I went into B&M once again, where I seem to buy so much stuff these days, and just bought a set of makeup brushes. I don't know how good these are going to be, I'm not sure how effective, but we'll give them a try. I usually like to listen to music or podcasts while I'm painting, and the podcast I'm listening to today is called A Podcast to the Curious, and that centres around the ghost stories of M.R. James, very appropriate for this time of year, of course. I'm sure you'll have seen the Ghost Stories for Christmas series, which were on the BBC, what, that's sort of 70s, I guess they started, which Mark Gatiss has revived over the last few years. They've covered all the stories of M.R. James, and now they've broadened it out to look at his contemporaries as well, what we might call the Jamesian circle, and they're discussing a lot of those ghost stories as well. So as I say, very appropriate for the season, and an excellent podcast. I'll put their link up in the show notes below. So let's start with this grey. So that was very quick. I thought as it was so quick I might as well do the whole lot. I put a bit too much paint on the brush with the first one. It needs surprisingly little amount of paint, and the makeup brush worked very well. So that's all gone on okay. So that first one's a bit heavy, but after that I've got the hang of it. So now let's repeat that, and this time with the white. And I think for the white I'm going to put even less paint on the brush. So yeah, I used a smaller brush for the white, put a lot less paint on. It still didn't need very much, so that's starting to get a nice effect there. Now the next stage then is I'm going to start painting the skin, and I think I'm going to go for a sort of light blue colour. I guess with zombies you've got a choice of sort of off flesh or green or blue. I'm going to try a blue on these, we'll see how that works. In fact, we've got the very thing with my Army Painter D&D set. We've got cold flesh, which is a very light blue, and I'm going to mix that in with a little bit of Dracolich scales, and I've got my white already in case I need to lighten it up anymore. So let's get these shaken, not stirred. That's all the skin done then. And yeah, it's not quite the same effect as the contrast paints, which I suppose, as the name suggests, have their own highlights and contrasts. But nonetheless, they're looking okay. I do like that skin colour. So the next job is to go in and start filling all the details in. The clothes, the boots, the weapons, and start adding in, maybe I'll colour in the eyes and those intestines. I'm not sure what colour I'm going to do those yet. So that's the bulk of the work done. There's a few little bits I've got to go over, one or two other bits to sort of finish, and of course I've got to do a final wash as well. I think yeah, the slap chop method hasn't really worked. That shading underneath hasn't really come through. Even watered down, the colours are too thick to really allow that shading to come through. But I think where it does work well is on the faces there. I think the dark eye sockets and the mouths and that kind of thing, those have come out quite nice. And yeah, I went with the blue skin, but I've given it a light overtone of green here and there, or a sort of dry brush of green, just to get a bit of variety. I'm probably going to add in some touches of purple as well to mark bruises. Is it lividity? Is that the term? Been a while since I read any forensics books. So that's taken me, I guess, hour and a half, couple of hours. So I think another hour or so and these will be finished. Actually, before I do my last wash, I'm just going to put some texture on the bases as well. They do have some texture moulded on, but I'm just going to add some sort of sand or grit as I did with the skeletons. Then everything looks uniform. So PVA and a bit of water. Now I've got a selection of washes here, but it seems entirely appropriate to go back to the Army Painters D&D range for something called Mouldy Wash. I wonder if that's a setting on my washing machine. That's the zombies wash then, which has toned everything down nicely. So I think the last thing I'll do now is just go back over all the figures and add a little highlight here and there just to pick out one or two features, and then we're done. And here's the finished result. Well, this is the first 5. They need a spray of matte varnish, but I'm going to let them dry overnight first before we do that. So they're based, washed, highlighted. I put a bit of rust on some of the blades. And here's the second 5. So these are fairly basic sort of plastic figures, but I do like the faces. I think they've got a lot of good character to them. They remind me a bit of the old EC Comics type zombies. And here's the whole unit again. Yeah, I think they make a suitably rotten addition to the graveyard section of my forthcoming fantasy skirmish game. Or it could be the lineup of a new boy band. What do you reckon? What would they be called, do you think? Can't be the Zombies, that's already been done. But I do wonder if one of the songs they'll cover will be Ghouls Just Wanna Have Fun. That's my first batch of 28mm fantasy figures painted then, and I have to say it's very nice to get back to 28mm, especially after painting those 10mm and my warships. So yeah, it's nice to paint something that I can actually see without squinting. The slap chop didn't really work out, but I didn't really expect it to be honest, given that some of these Tamiya paints I've got, they're the consistency of mud now. I've had them for years. The army painters worked much better, but even so, not really designed for slap chop. As I said, I've got that, I think it's flow agent or flow medium coming, so I'll probably try again with that next time when I do the rest of the figures. And the other thing I'm also going to try next time is setting up a wet palette. I've never done that before, so I'm keen to give that a go. So that'll be next time. And as I mentioned a few times, these are primarily for my fantasy skirmish game. Over the break I've managed to get the rules together, roughly anyway. I've got a sort of good idea on each section now. So I reckon about another month I'll have at least the first draft of those ready. By that time I'll have the rest of these figures painted. I'll have some of the scenery made up for the game. So I'll be able to give them a run through and a play test. As well as that, I've still got my 10mm Undead Army to paint. I'm not going to film that this time because I kind of did it before and went through stage by stage, but of course I will show you once they're all done. And also with the Fantastic Battles rule set, we're looking at setting up a campaign at the club as well. So I'll let you know how that's going, how that develops. Obviously we've got Fantastic Battles as our main rule set for tabletop. They do have some campaign ideas in them, but we're also looking back to things like Tony Barth's very famous old set of campaign rules from the, I think it's the Hyboria campaign he did, and one or two other things as well. So as usual it'll be sort of an amalgamation of different rule sets, I imagine. Anyway, I'll let you know how that's all going, and of course I'll be doing reports on that as the campaign gets up and running. And of course this is also the first time using the new painting setup in the shed here. That will seem to go well. Lighting is fine, I've got the heating on, I've got my music playing. I can shut myself away in here for a couple of hours. And the beauty of having a setup like this, of course, is when I've finished I don't have to clear everything away, I can leave everything here. Luxury, luxury. So thanks again for joining me today. As always, likes, shares, subscribes, comments, questions, suggestions, all very much appreciated, and I'll see you next time.